in a minute, as soon as everybody gets settled and quiet. I would like to open up the public portion. The time for speaking will be 5 minutes. Again, I'm looking for information that helps us get to a better decision in the future. And if you could be short, concise, and informative, it's greatly appreciated. 5 minutes. So Heather, who's our first speaker?
The first speaker is David Vespremi, followed by Laszlo Vespremi, followed by Sue Degree.
Thank you for the additional time. I'm David Vespremi, Moss Beach resident. I've been closely involved in this issue for the better part of 10 years now. And I have some observations to share that I hope will impact the decision-making process for the commission. Let me begin by pointing out that because this project, depending on where you peg the start date, is between 10 to 14 years old, there are some questions, I think, in my mind, and I speak for many community members, that wonder why it is, for example, that we're still talking about a special use permit when there's been ample time to explore a rezone for the area that would specifically allow the applicant to pursue their vision for what they would like to do with these parcels. There's certainly been no shortage of time or money or energy spent, and yet there's a big question mark about where that effort has been expended. Another example of this has to do with the actual commercial viability of this undertaking. The applicant has made various vague allusions to pent-up business demand or interest for occupants. There's been ample time to get letters of intent, letters of a commitment from businesses that say that, should this space become available and within a certain time frame, that they are committed and on board. That hasn't happened either. But when we drill down, I think the bigger issue is this. I attended the 2012 Coastal Commission hearing. In fact, I've attended most of the hearings on this subject, and something interesting happened there. The applicant presented to the Coastal Commission and was offered at that hearing an opportunity to withdraw the application, work with the Coastal Commission, and submit under the current application number. The applicant was given a very clear choice. It's a matter of public record, and the applicant declined and said that they wanted a decision rendered on the application as submitted. With the full disclosure having been made at that time that once that decision had been made, that application essentially would have to be stuck with it. And that's exactly what happened. The Coastal Commission, contrary to what happened here at the county level, both before yourselves, the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, went unanimously the opposite way, rejecting it. That's why what we're talking about now, if you look at the PLN number, is a 2013 PLN number. It's 2013-00451. It's a new application. This is not a minor procedural point. It's actually very important because by making that choice, the applicant can now no longer go back and graft on any of the data sets that had been prescribed under the 1996 LCP. They are now under the new LCP update for 2013, drafted in 2012, passed in 2013. Similarly, CCAG had a different set of standards for the airport overlay then versus what's on the table now. There's no grandfathering under this new application. For that matter, the traffic study predated the tunnel. The traffic study would also need to be updated. Plan Princeton didn't exist at that time. Plan Princeton does exist now under this new application. I'm sorry to say, but I can't fathom how the current EIR has found that this new application is deemed complete without addressing those specific points. It simply isn't. For this EIR to find that the applicant now has a complete application, they would then need to go back and redo all this work. And again, this isn't something that should be shocking or surprising to the applicant or to yourselves. This was something that was very clearly set out by the Coastal Commission, and the applicant was given the choice on which of those two paths they wish to proceed. You know, and I think they now need to live with and abide by that decision. In terms of where I'd like to see this project go, and I think many members of the community, you know, I think we would like to see the research updated. I think we would like to see the traffic study updated. I think we would like to see the new LCP looked more closely at. I think we'd like to see the airport boundaries defined. I think we'd like to see where Plan Princeton ties into all of this. I think if all that's done, and the community sees that everything complies and so forth, there might be some support for the project. But in its current form, there just isn't and can't be. And tragically, the applicant in that span of 10 years could have by now provided 10 years of housing for the developmentally challenged people that they're, you know, ostensibly trying to support. There's been ample sites that were zoned for it, ready for it, and the applicant simply has chosen not to pursue that. So we've been in a holding pattern for 10 years, and it was entirely avoidable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laszlo Vespremi, followed by Sue Degree, I'm sorry.
Planning Commissioners, my name is Laszlo Vespremi, and I'd like to point out that this is a very unusual development proposal in front of you. Unlike others, it has three principles with no extensive development record, even though this is the largest development process ever to happen on the coast. They also don't have the finances lined up like a developer would, or the tenants or prospective tenants signed up in the past 10 years since they are planning this. In fact, there is absolutely no study of vacancy rates on the coast, and we know very well that the nearby harbor village is practically empty for years. The LCP and the zoning explicitly prohibit housing at the property. So this development project does not make sense as a development, but as a land speculation scheme, it does make perfect sense. And this is where I think you should look more closely. An investor, one of the investors, bought the former wetland for $2 million. Instead of seeking to rezone it, this promoter is now asking for a host of use permits in order to flip the land. Now, unless, contrary to what Mr. Scott said here, if the buildings are repurposed for a hotel or whatever you said, condos, the use permit stays with the land. So the new owner is under no obligations to reapply for use permits because they don't go with the owner, they stay with the land. So the thing that was objected to at the Coastal Commission meeting is, and Coastal Commissioner Steve Blank found distasteful is, and I like to quote him word for word, "I thought I had seen it all until one project came to the Commission on appeal that felt like the developers has strapped hostages onto the front of a tank and dared the county and the Coastal Commission to deny the project." I mean, that sums it up. If the goal was really to provide housing for disabled adults, there are two designated sites in Moss Beach alone, one right next to the hospital. With the money they spent fighting this proposal, they could have had housing there for 10 years. Now, I have three specific questions here. Number one, did applicants ever showed efforts to obtain alternate sites? I can answer that as no. Number two, if Montara Water, do they agreed to water allocation? If the answer is no, why are we sitting here? There's no water, no building. Number three, subdivisions are prohibited in the LCP. Why would the county consider an exception here when there is a clear method of rezoning that would do this. Thank you.
Good morning. I just wanted to thank everybody who has worked on this project for many, many times. The open-mindedness and willing to listen and to do research and to help each other out. I hope that that continues. I am a parent on the coast side who has a son with a disability. I'm also part of CPALS and have worked as much as I possibly can on the BigWave. I also went from being a teacher in 1999 to being an advocate for special needs. I was a general ed teacher, and I became an advocate for special needs in 1999 with PARCA, which I'm still the advocate for special needs, and family services. Reason was I had to worry about where is my son going to live. I'm not going to survive forever. He is not going to be able to go out on his own like his siblings. And so I actually changed jobs for that reason, to spend the time that was needed during each day to search for housing, employment, recreation, transportation, aging issues, and things like that. Oh, did I say employment? Yes, absolutely, big thing. For those who have special needs, the data's out there. Finding housing, having housing available is extremely difficult, extremely difficult. Finding employment is equally difficult. Transportation is the pits. And if you live on the coast, transportation is dreadful. And if the Planning Commission could do anything about transportation for everybody, it would be a welcome. I'm as strong an advocate as I can on transportation. I've gone to meetings in, I think I sat with you, didn't I? So, on coastside transportation and in Pacifica, I have to say that the county fortunately has changed ridership, which, like, can the coast ever compete with El Camino? Or would we want to? We could never do that. And so it looked like we would never have transportation. But fortunately, the county has put in a wonderful word, or. It's or need. And so the optimism of getting transportation for everybody on the coast, and those of us who are parents with special needs, we don't want our children segregated. They're perfectly capable of being social and being on the regular transportation, and they are now. So I encourage anybody who wants to join me, because I haven't let up on trying to get transportation on the coast. It's for everybody. And so, and housing is very difficult, and if there are 2 other spots in the county, that's great. One of the treasures of the Coastal Act of 1972, which I was very active on, and the subsequent local coastal plans, is that there is that dedication to ensuring that all strata of persons in this state has a right to access. And that's access not only to the public beaches, but also to affordable housing. Where in this county can you find affordable housing? It's getting worse and worse and worse. In my job as an advocate, I attend housing meetings constantly. Affordable housing for everybody is difficult. Affordable housing for special needs is extremely difficult. We are coastsiders. Our coastsiders are pledged to help our own kids to be in their community where they grew up, where they have friends, where they know businesses and they know their way around. So for all of you and for all of you out there who have helped get this together, I'm deeply appreciative. Thank you.
Do we have anybody else in the audience who wish to speak on this issue? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I will move that we close the public comment at this time.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes 3-0. Well, we had some questions that were directed to staff, particularly on procedures, redoing work, use permits, alternate sites, subdivisions. Could we get some address to those
Yes.
issues?
Thank you, Chair Hansen. I try to keep good notes, and I'll walk through what I identified as questions, and if I miss something, please let me know. Let's see. Okay. First question, why are we still talking about a use permit versus rezoning? The type of use proposed that is allegedly not allowed by the zoning is the modern sanitarium. And as Camille identified in her presentation, those types of facilities are allowed in any zoning district throughout the county without a use permit. So the short answer to the question is there's not a need to rezone. Second question regarding commercial viability. The ability of the project proponent to obtain businesses to rent the facilities is something that a risk that they are assuming. It's not one that is necessarily subject to our review and regulation. Financing of the project has been a key consideration to the project developers, and as I understand it, it's essential that to support the long-term operation. So that is the operation of the modern sanitarium. And that kind of relates to another question that was raised about what about other affordable housing sites available within the Mid-Coast? There are some. They are constrained topographically and in terms of their ability to tie into public service systems, and they are not zoned to accommodate the type of industrial or commercial activity that this project includes as a primary means of ensuring its economic stability over the long term. Question was, or more of a comment regarding that this is a new application subject to the new LCP. And I agree with that comment. We have looked at the project's consistency with the updated LCP, and we will be preparing a detailed analysis of that conformity, which will be contained in the staff report that is presented to to this commission at its next hearing on the item. We've also looked at the prior traffic report and reviewed it and conducted supplemental analysis as necessary to address the project changes, and that's been done as part of this EIR addendum. As far as the project's relationship to the planned Princeton project, the planned Princeton project's at a stage now where we are developing land use alternatives that will be reviewed by the community and the steering committee, the technical advisory committee, and eventually by this commission. To date, I can say that as far as the administrative draft of those land use alternatives go, there are no changes proposed to the local zoning or development policies that would make this proposal inconsistent with what we envision to come out of Plan Princeton. So at this point, there are no inconsistencies between what's been developed through Plan Princeton, nor do I anticipate that there will be. I'd also like to go back to the discussion that occurred previously regarding projects deemed complete. It's been a practice of this county and other regulatory authorities to not subject projects that have been designed to conform to existing regulations to new regulations that have not yet taken effect. So our view is that this project needs to comply with the plans and regulations that are in place at this point in time. So I don't think there's going to be a problem in terms of compatibility with Plan Princeton, and in the event there would be, this project would essentially be grandfathered and subject to the current plans.
Would we know at the time we're making decisions what potential, how we're out of phase between where we think we're going at that point?
So at this point, we are anticipating our next public workshop on the land use alternatives for the Princeton plan to occur on October 2nd. So we will have feedback from the public on those land use alternatives by the time the coastal development permit is presented to your commission on October 22nd. but we will not have final action on the plan at that
We'll
time.
have, but we'll know where we have potential problems.
Correct.
Thank you.
I think the last comment that I'd like to respond to is in relationship to the use permit and the question that was raised in terms of potential future changes to the project. The person making that comment is correct that a use permit does run with the land so long as that use permit continues to be within its effective time period. The use permit is specific to the land use. So the use permit that would run with the land is for a modern sanitarium. Should anybody propose a use that's different than a modern sanitarium, they would need to amend the use permit, which would be subject to your review and approval.
Is there a time limit on use permits?
It's at the discretion of the decision-making body. They're typically 5 years long, but we have constructed them to be longer or shorter.
Okay.
There was question in terms of Montero Water and Sanitary District's agreement to serve the project with water, and every indication we've gotten from their staff is that they have the capacity and willingness to serve the project, and they have staff available at the hearing today if you'd like further information on that. Finally,
Can I interrupt you on that? By the time we come to make a decision, will we have a firm commitment on regards to the water? As far as the capacity, do you think that at that time we will know for sure?
I believe that we have a firm commitment at this point, and
Okay.
if the district staff disagrees, they can say so.
Got it. Thanks.
Right, and Ms. Hsu points out it will also be a condition of approval. So securing all the necessary approvals from MWSD to actually install the water extension will need to occur before the project can be built. Finally, there was an assertion that subdivision is prohibited by the local coastal program, and that is not the case. Subdivisions are allowed by the local coastal program. They must comply with the policies of the local coastal program, as well as with our subdivision regulations and with our zoning, which are implementing components of our local coastal program. And we believe that the project complies with all those relevant policies and regulations. So I believe I've answered the questions that have been posed, but if there are additional questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I had one of the other things that, as I see it, is kind of in the mix on the co-side is the comprehensive traffic management plan, the co-side traffic management plan. And this certainly feeds into that. And I'm wondering where we're at with that. I know the community is somewhat divided at this point, or at least I think they are. So I'm just kind of wondering where we're at with that and how that meshes with this project. And I'm wondering too about, well, I guess I'm wondering who shoulders the cost of any traffic amendments or changes, improvements, based on this project or based on the co-side traffic management program plan.
Sure. You mentioned division amongst the community, and I believe you're referring to the Highway 1 crossing and turn lane projects that are being developed pursuant to funds that we receive from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority. The Comprehensive Transportation Management Plan, which is just kicking off, is a separate project, and I want to update you on that and its relationship to this project, but I just want to make sure I can respond to your concern about division between the community on.
Well, I think I was responding to what I had heard around improvements around Highway 1 in Cypress, concerns in the community about that.
Okay. Okay. So, and that actually ties into who shoulders the responsibility of installing improvements. A mitigation measure contained in the EIR and adjusted by the EIR addendum requires the project proponent to annually monitor traffic volumes at the Highway 1 and Cypress intersection to determine if either a traffic signal or a roundabout is needed to resolve any additional traffic problems related to this project. So in the event that traffic volumes show that such a light or roundabout is needed, it will be the applicant's responsibility to install those consistent with Caltrans standards and all other relevant requirements. As it relates to broader transportation program improvements, that really is the responsibility of the county, and that is what we are pursuing as part of the comprehensive transportation management plan that's being kicked off. Where that stands is that we have established a project website. It's called Connect the Coastside. And right now it is, the main component is a virtual public workshop where the public can provide feedback about different segments of Highway 1 through the community and identify what type of improvements they would like to see along those segments. We're in the data collection and analysis stage so that we can start formulating some proposals which we'll bring to the community for further discussion in the next upcoming months. But this project is certainly, the schedule of this project is certainly ahead of that. So what I can say is when it comes to project-specific traffic-related impacts, the project proponents will be responsible for dealing with the Highway 1 and Cypress intersection, and they will also be installing certain improvements along the Airport Street right-of-way that will help facilitate alternative forms of transportation, biking and walking to the site.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Is there anything you want to discuss before we, between ourselves?
No, just for me, traffic is an issue, and we've talked to the planner about this. Feeling the need to have any updates well enough in advance of October 22nd, so that we can really think through any additional mitigation measures that might be appropriate. I'm particularly concerned with Highway 1 and Capistrano, in addition to Highway 1 and Cypress. Weekend and weekday, when I look at the wonderful almost 100 spaces for coastal access associated with this project, I am concerned about additional traffic at the Capistrano location, which is the more tourist-centered area on the coast at this point.
And also what's different this time, there's 4 new eyes looking at it. So, we'll definitely come with a different perspective than the last time around too.
Yeah, that is correct. I think, as me is concerned, I'm going back and trying to understand what was approved before. Understand that if there's any things that were missed on that, and any other, taking in all the comments that there have come, and what was said on the presentations, to try to understand the whole scope of this project.
I would like to ask Camille or Steve if there's anything you're looking from us at this point that will help you.
Really, just the intent was to give you an overview, a better understanding of the project. If you have any further questions after you've had a chance to process, you can reach out to staff, just to have an understanding of the process going forward.
And this is still open for public review until the,
Absolutely.
so you still
September-
appreciate comments coming in that I wish I had said, you say, please send them in to you, right?
Yes, we would appreciate them before September 2nd, but only because it'll give us adequate time to review and respond to the questions. But, you know, it would be accepted right up to the hearing, October 22nd. And that is a tentative date, just in case something changes.
Okay, thank you. All right, then I get, do we need a motion to close this? No. Then we'll end our item number 1 and proceed on to correspondence and other matters. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I do not have any correspondence or other matters to report at this time.
Okay. And study session for our next meeting?
Our next meeting will be on August 27th. It's looking pretty full. Looks like we're going to have 5 items, including the Bay Area catering and events parking exception matter, which was continued from today, as well as a resolution regarding the phasing out of that use from its current location at the Fair Oaks site. Also on the August 27th agenda, we have the subdivision amendment proposal that was previously approved by this commission, but then remanded back by the Board of Supervisors. And we have a new single-family residence proposed in the Moss Beach area, which requires a coastal development permit. So based on the extent of that agenda, I'm not recommending a study session. I do note that it was suggested that we conduct a study session regarding California Environmental Equality Act requirements, and we are working on figuring out the best date to do that.
Yeah, since now we got a couple of them in front of us.
Yes,
That'd be great. Thank you.
you're very welcome. And that concludes my report.
Okay. Anything? No? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll adjourn our meeting and thank everybody.